Welcome.
Please welcome.
The Outdoor Project Podcast. Hear real conversations from industry leaders on the latest in the hardscape and landscape industry. You're now streaming the Outdoor Project Podcast.
What's up, guys? Welcome to another episode of the Outdoor Project Podcast. This episode is sponsored by Sensenig's Landscape Supply, your outdoor living store. Today, we have a special guest, a true icon, industry leader, Paver Pete. Pete, thanks for showing up today, man.
Oh, thank you very much for having me. Braving the blizzard.
7 inches last night.
Some areas we got a little bit more. I think close to a foot.
Yeah, actually, I was downtown Rochester. I think we got about 7 to 10. Yeah. Thanks for coming, Pete. I know you came in last night because of the storm.
Yeah, I got the F-350 and four-wheel drive. Diesel's humming. I'm ready, man.
Ready to roll. Pete, I just want to start off with this. How did you get the name Paver Pete?
I was on a television program, and the host of the TV show, this is a long time ago, couldn't say my last name, which is Balaglu. And the Paver guy, Paver Pete, and it just stuck. It just got easier for that host to say Paver Pete.
It was pretty amazing. You know, when I first started selling techo-bloc and going to those contractor shows, it was amazing how much attention you got. I mean, everything that you brought to the table during those shows, everybody was in wow, you know what I mean? And whether you've seen it in Rochester or Buffalo or wherever the show was, everybody looked up to Paver Pete in the industry, you know, and it's still there. And I know I don't see you anymore. Maybe you have a different job title, but just wondering, what are you doing now with techo-bloc? So we don't see you at the contractor show. We see those two guys. I don't know those two guys' names like we know Paver Pete, but actually they're very good too.
Yeah, they are very good. This is our 15th year of Techno-Bloc Contractor Showcase event. I do most of them, but I can't do all of them. Yeah. It's almost all of 48 contiguous states, 10 provinces that Techno-Bloc is in. So especially new markets where maybe they're not really familiar with Techo, you know, they'll send me there and I'll yell and scream and say a couple bad words, and everybody will get excited, including myself. But I think I will be back in upstate New York this year. I think that's part of my schedule. So I'm hoping that's the case because I love coming up here. I live in Cleveland, Ohio, with my wife and daughter, and this is just part of the area, right? That's my area of influence and my area of where my friends are, and it's nice to see friendly faces. But it's amazing where showcases come in 15 years.
Yeah, and again, I think the two guys that were doing it the last couple of years, they were great too. They brought a lot of energy. But it's going to be nice to have you back.
I appreciate that. My title is still Director of Education. So I travel around working internally, making sure that our team is the best consultants they can be to the contracting and the dealer communities, all around the country. And working with contractors on job sites. I mentioned earlier, I was in Columbus, Ohio last week with a contractor and doing a system knowledge training seminar that was supposed to be 2 hours, ended up being 6.5. The more questions they had, the more things I could draw up on a little easel pad up on the wall and and explain and bring out my little aggregates. And this is what an ASTM number 57 is. It's a 90% fractured face, and drop it in a bowl of water and they go, oh, look, it's clean. Yeah, that's right.
It's nice how you can boil all that down and make sense to the contractor.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, there's, in my opinion, there's 4 things contractors need to do to be successful. They need to be great at math, estimating, job costing, budgeting, overhead recovery. It's very important that they start there. My degree is in accounting, so I get to help them, understand some of the math to make sure that they're making money. Marketing has gotten more complicated. Even what we're doing now, podcasts and that kind of stuff. That's, the digital realm of marketing, and shifting from a traditional marketing campaign of running ads in magazines and doing home shows to doing what we're doing now, or boosting an ad on Facebook or something like that. So that needs, some education and some training to be better at it. Sales, which really hasn't changed, but there's a lot of people that aren't good at it, and they're, trying to close sales versus helping people buy from them. So there's some slowing down and learning the sales cycle and the sales process, depending on the size of the job and how you run your business, that, you know, the consumers will be happier with the purchase if they go through the cycle. You can hurry, they'll sign, and they'll give you a check, and then in the end, they won't be happy. So we got to slow down, make sure that they understand it. We call it educate and inform, and that's very important. And then the last one, which is installation, and there's, you know, a couple governing bodies out there, and though we agree with them at Techo, and I agree with them as Paver Pete, there's some things that I think they don't go far enough on. The National Concrete Masonry Association talks about a minimum 1 foot of clean stone behind walls. And I feel that that's wrong. They should be saying, and I say, and we say, you know, 1 foot minimum, 3 foot recommended column of clean stone behind the wall. You'll have less efflorescence. You'll have less mineral deposits. You'll have less hydrostatic pressure, less lateral, you know. Let's take it a little bit further, right? They're a great association. They do a great job. There's a couple little words here and there, and I think that's what we're talking about today, you know, hybrid installations of paving stones. But they got to take it a little bit further.
Yeah. And we are very excited to have you here today because me and Joe and some of the guys here have been getting a ton of questions from different contractors in regards to going permeable and doing that open grade base. And we just really want to touch base on it. What goes into doing an open grade permeable base? Well,
let's go back to the NCMA just for 1 second. The NCMA for a base under a retaining wall says you can use densely graded stone, right? ASTM C2940s, which is 3/4 inch angular stone down to fines. Okay, so that's an option specifically for when you need to elevate the drain tile behind the wall. You want to make sure that you have that densely graded stone to elevate that pipe so they can see daylight, maximum run of 50 feet. They say you can use open graded stone, which is your question, right?
Yep.
As a base under a retaining wall. That gets your pipe very low in the horizon, so we have a way of scavenging water and running it out before it can do damage. Water is the lubricant that causes failure. And they say you can use unreinforced concrete under a retaining wall. So flowable fill or flowable base, something that's self-leveling, unreinforced, no rebar, no fiber, no nothing, as a base under walls. And when would you use one versus the other? Well, that's site-specific. Let's make a decision. We know we can use any one of the three. Let's figure out what's best for our consumer, for our project, for the longevity of this wall, which is, 85 to 110 year design life. Okay. Now, when we look at interlocking pavement, industry kind of gives us one option: densely graded stone, sand set, edge restraint spike down, sand filled joint. Well, I don't know. I mean, let's look at some other options, because we have permeable pavement. We have a lot of information on that now, dating back 50, 60, 70 years where water runs through the system. So why can't we combine the two together and take some of the benefits of densely graded stone, like a sand-filled joint, and some of the benefits of permeable pavement, like an open graded stone, open graded bedding layer, self-consolidating material, little to no mechanical efforts needed to get them to, 100% of their potential density. Let's do the right thing.
Yeah.
But there are times, let's say up against a foundation wall in a backyard patio application, well, I want densely graded stone. I don't want to build a reservoir for water up against somebody's foundation wall.
You want to pitch that water away and get it away from the house.
Yeah, absolutely. And the reality is I don't want to build up against foundation walls anyway, but if I have to and the homeowners are insistent or whatever, the designer won't let me change it or whatever, okay, I can still use open graded stone, but then I got to put an EPDM, pond type liner up against the foundation wall, extending over the subgrade, and I gotta mechanically connect that to the foundation wall, which usually means tap cons or ram sets and adhesives, and I don't like messing with people's foundation walls if I can avoid it.
And I know you touch base on this too on a new build. So they want a patio right away, a new build. It's going to settle near the house. So how do you address that?
Yeah, don't build against the house.
Yeah.
And reality is nobody hangs out there anyway. Imagine somebody with a plate of food, right, a fork in one hand, leaning up against your foundation wall and eating. I mean, they're not standing there anyway. So why are we building there? So if you build outside of that zone of over excavation, it's going to settle. I mean, it's 8 or 10 feet deep, right? You have a 5-foot frost line. Most builders will backfill with, or whoever's there, maybe it's not the builder specifically, but whoever's charged with or subcontracted to backfill around that foundation wall, they're going to push kind of whatever's around into that void. Yeah, there's some clean stone. Yes, there's a drain tile and all that kind of stuff. But mostly it's just leftover building material, really horrible clay and clumps. And, that 8 or 10 foot column of soil can take, 20 years, 30 years to get back to an in situ or a virgin state. So build outside of that range. Stay away from it.
So design-wise, just design a little bit differently.
Just don't build up against the house, basically.
Yeah, I mean, you have a man door coming out, sliding glass, porch doors, whatever you have coming out there. Okay, let's pour a little concrete pad there, maybe 6x6 or 8x8, something that can bridge, that differential settlement around that foundation wall. Let's build a little landing. Let's set a couple of wing walls. At Techo, we have, I don't know what an exact number, but let's say 13 double-sided structural walls.
Right.
I mean, let's take advantage of that. Yes, they're structural, but they're also double-sided, and they're, and they have pillar combinations with them. Let's put a couple wing walls, couple pillars, couple nice lights, some beautiful pavement down there, and then transition out into the yard that hasn't been disturbed when that home got built. And then I can use open graded stone. I'm not worried about that potential reservoir of water under a pavement because I'm not against the foundation wall.
Geotextile, there's a lot of guys that have question marks in regards to that. Do you recommend using some kind of fabric or textile under every patio or in between like your clean stone and your sand so that it doesn't join?
Yeah. Okay, well, there's never clean stone and then sand because it will migrate.
It will.
Yeah, so we would, if we were using a clean stone base, let's say a number 57 stone, 3/4 inch clean stone.
Yep.
3/4 and half. Number 57s is a mix of number 5s and number 7s. So it's 1/2 inch, 3/4 inch clean stone, less than 5% passing the 200 sieve, 90% fractured face, and hardness tested with the LA abrasion test. So that's exactly what it is.
Perfect.
Yeah, that's what we want. So if we're using that as a base, we would use a number 8 stone, which again, shape, hardness, and gradation, same qualifications, but it's a 1/4 inch stone. So you're not really worried about the migration of those 8s into those 57s because they almost don't fit, right? I mean, just barely do. The only time I would use an intermittent layer of fabric to segregate those two layers would be vehicular traffic. So even a residential driveway, there's enough, a little Hyundai or a little, car or whatever, just kind of bouncing along has kinetic energy, the energy of motion, and can cause some of that migration. So I'd want to segregate them. Now let's get back to your question, which is geotextile. Now that I've corrected you.
Yeah, exactly.
That's why you're here.
And the reason why he asked this because we do get guys maybe to your concrete or to your contractor day, and now they want to do like an open base system.
Yeah.
So without knowing anything, they're putting wash stone in the bottom, and they're like, well, if I screed concrete sand, it's just going to kind of go into.
That's right.
Yeah, you're right. Well, maybe I'll just put a filter fabric. Screed
over
a filter fabric.
There's guys doing a lot of different things.
Yeah. Well, we'll correct the record
they're
today.
Twisting it.
Yeah. Let's go back to the question about geotextiles, though. The industry will say it's optional, and I disagree with that. I think geotextile is cheap insurance against settlement and failure. And if you're using a non-woven, like a felt-type material,
something that water can flow through nicely.
Well, we'll get to that in a second. But okay, so there's non-wovens. That's a soil separator. That's all it does. It keeps the soil from mixing with the base. Okay, that's a pretty inexpensive option, and it's a good thing. Okay, good. Let's go up to the next level. We got woven fabrics. And the woven fabrics are soil separators, but also have bilateral tension ability. So tension by the weight of the stone on them in a couple of different directions bilaterally. They can bridge minor differential settlement. So the subgrade could fail a little bit, a little, imperfection, and the fabric will bridge it. So that imperfection won't be evident in the surface of the pavement. So, wow, that saves us from a callback. That saves us from ponding and pooling water. And ponding and pooling water in upstate New York in the winter, we call ice. Yeah. So we don't want pavement and ice. Bad combination, right? So
right.
Even though you sell salt and our pavers are salt resistant in writing, we don't want that. So then you step up to the next level, which are woven geotextiles that have bi-axial geogrid strength. So, it's late in the season. I'm trying to get one more job done. I could put in a fabric that has bi-axial geogrid strength, can stabilize soils and soil separate and have bilateral tensionability. And, we're going anywhere from 10 cents a square foot up to $1 a square foot. And to never have a callback,
it's worth it.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Now, that's between the subgrade and the base. Now, when do I put it between the base and the bedding layer? Rarely. In an overlay, I use it over concrete because, there's two types of ready-mix concrete. Remember what they are? Cracked and
Cracked.
Gonna crack. Yeah. So I don't want my bedding layer to migrate into those cracks. But in a hybrid installation, I use it in vehicular traffic. Permeable pavement, I use it in vehicular traffic. That geotextile between the base and the bedding layer. In a traditional densely graded stone, sand set application, traditional interlocking pavement, I don't use an intermittent layer of fabric. Now let's get back to what we were doing on stage, which is that little box and clean stone and then bi-axial geogrid and clean stone and bi-axial geogrid and clean stone. No compactive effort at all. I weigh about 185 pounds. A little more than that.
No comment.
All right. I'm on a strict chicken wing diet. Very strict.
You just tell me you don't eat pizza, so
my doctor said
you got your hunting weight on.
Strict surf and turf diet. That's what he says. Stick with that. You'll be fine. So I stand on the box. They unhinge the box, and it holds my weight up. Yeah. So what is that showing? That's showing the use of a bi-axial geogrid. Retaining walls, uniaxial geogrid. Strength in one direction, perpendicular to the wall face. For pavement, we use bi-axial geogrid, strength in both directions. And to put an intermittent layer of biaxial grid might save us the dig to China. Let's call it that. So, I'm building a residential walkway, upstate New York. It is 6 to 8 inches of base. Do I need biaxial grid? Well, maybe it's new construction, and I'm worried about some settlement, right? Because I don't know what they did and how they compacted it, and I can't dig all the way down. Maybe I'll throw a layer of biaxial grid halfway between that layer of base material, whether it be hybrid, open graded stone, or densely graded stone. What's my cost? I don't know, 10 or 15 cents a square foot.
For a sense of security.
Oh, man, and the homeowners are happy, and they don't have callbacks, and all. It's just, okay, I'm doing a backyard patio. Again, new construction, really crappy clay soil, which is, a lot of people are fooled by it because it has a high dry strength, but the minute it gets wet, it's a mess. It's you can't traffic it, you can't walk on it, your boots are sticking to it. It's just horrible. So, it's late in the season, it's early in the season. I've got really crappy clay soil. House is only 5 or 10 years old. Throw a layer of biaxial grid in your base. Why not? Halfway through 3 inches, layer of biaxial grid. A little different than fabrics. We don't overlap grids. Grids abut each other. They don't overlap like a geotextile would. Yep. Why not?
Right.
It's vehicular traffic. I'm doing a driveway. It's a couple thousand square feet. Maybe my base is 8 or 10 inches thick. A lot of people will overbuild their bases and just dig, like I said, to China. Forget it. Don't do that. Yeah. Just put 4 inches in, put a layer of biaxial grid, 4 inches in, put your fabric to separate, if you're doing a hybrid installation, your number 8s from your 57s, or screed your sand on a densely graded application, and you're done.
Yeah.
Why not have that additional, benefit of, like we were talking earlier about, the Great Wall of China. It's a soil reinforced structure. It's, blocks and columns of aggregate and tamarisk branches to stabilize that stone. Now, we don't use, non-biodegradable branch matter. We use petroleum-soaked polyester fabrics, geogrids. That's what they are. Polyester, many ester fibers, petroleum-soaked, and that's how we stabilize that material. Why not do it?
Yeah, and I think a lot of the contractors think, maybe we're just trying to sell them extra product, but the reality is, especially on a wall, if you could grid every layer, why not? Every other layer, why not? Is there an advantage or a disadvantage to using more grid than you should, or is it just a sense of security for these projects?
Yeah,
I really like to tell customers and contractors to over-engineer behind their walls. I mean, what do you have to lose for cheap insurance?
We get a lot of concerns that maybe we're just out to sell some product, and I think, how do we defeat that?
I have been dealing with Sensnigs my entire career, so over 20 years have had some interaction with you guys or at one of the locations. And anybody that thinks that you're just trying to sell them something doesn't know you guys. Yeah. And that's, I would never do it, and I know you guys would never do it. Yeah. We're giving people advice to help them be better, to help them build a better project. And there has to be, in my opinion, sales is the transfer of trust. And you guys have built trust in the community the way I feel that, my name, Paver Pete, or Techo-Bloc's name has built, that trust in the community that if we're telling you something, it's in your best interest. And, is there going to be a sale associated to it? Sometimes. Yeah. Sometimes it's just steering you from this stone to that stone, right, in this application or that application. So I think that those customers who feel that way ought to sit down with you for a few minutes and have a conversation, because you would. I know the staff here, and they would never do that. We appreciate that. Yeah, the answer to your question is you're both wrong.
Perfect.
I love it. This is educational for us.
Okay. Grid in a retaining wall, placement, depth, and type. Placement, depth, and type should never be guessed. There are grid placement charts in our Techo Spec Guide. For preliminary design, there's a free design service. They can fill in the checklist online or right there in the book, send it to us. We'll do a preliminary design telling you grid placement, depth, and type. And follow that to the letter. If it requires engineering locally, get a local engineer, take our drawings to them, take all the math we gave you to them, which was free, and sit down with that engineer, pay that local engineer who's familiar with the soils, familiar with the aggregates, familiar with the loads, lateral loads, or the friction angle of the soil we call a fee angle. They're familiar with all that stuff. Pay them the $500, $1,000, or $2,000, whatever it is. Yeah. Get the soil analysis that you need and build that wall to that specification every time. Never guess at grid placement, depth, and type. Now, to go with a 3-foot column of clean stone always makes sense, right? Because you can't run heavy compaction equipment behind a retaining wall, okay? It will push the wall from vertical to a negative batter, or from a 5-degree batter to 4 or 3 or 2 or whatever. It will start the failure of the wall in the compaction of the soils behind the wall. So if you go with a 3-foot column of clean stone, you don't need any compactive effort. So you're not going to push your wall. And then you can compact outside of that 3-foot range with any equipment you want, right? And the industry is fine with that. So you can bring in a real good sheep's foot articulating roller. You can bring in a jumping jack. You can bring in a vibratory, compactor, vibratory roller. You can bring in anything you want outside of that 3-foot range. Yeah. So going to 3-foot column of clean stone, great recommendation. It will save the consumer money. It will save the contractor money and time, and it's good advice. But GeoGrid in a wall, let's stick with the engineering.
Yeah.
When it comes to drainage, a lot of times you're going to have to put some drainage underneath all this stone too, correct? To push away all this water.
Are we talking about walls or pavers?
Pavers and walls, either way.
Okay. Let's go to walls first, because that we were just talking about. Industry always recommends a pipe behind the wall, 4-inch minimum diameter, minimum 4 inches above subgrade, minimum column, 4 inches of clean stone completely around that pipe, holes down. You want water to bypass the pipe, water carries sediment with it. We want that sediment to settle out, water to come up, hydraulic pressure out to the environment, maximum run of 50 feet before it sees daylight, or tied into a subterranean drainage structure, stormwater system, something like that. Okay, so
now is that a PVC pipe or a
perforated?
A perforated pipe?
Perforated.
Doesn't matter.
Schedule 35, Schedule 40, there's not much load that's going to be on that pipe. So I'm not really worried about that pipe.
You can use the flexible.
Yeah, absolutely. Holes all the way around. Just, if it's holes only on one side of the pipe, make sure they're down. Yep. If there's holes all the way around, I'm okay. Water's going to bypass. I'm in good shape. So that pipe should never see water. Okay? That would be the best case scenario, because at the toe of the wall, there's a positive pitch away from the wall. And at the top of the wall, there's a positive pitch away. So we're basically building something that should be dry all the time.
Right.
That's our best case scenario. It's there for insurance against any water that might be there that we didn't know was there in our initial investigations, our initial construction. So we have a pipe there. It's kind of a backup. So that pipe coming through the face of the wall, hypothetically, or tied in, should never have water coming out of it, which would be awesome.
It's ideal.
Right? Yeah, that's it. Now, in a permeable pavement application, the pipe we're talking about is an exfiltration pipe. And I kind of separate infiltration from exfiltration. Those words, I don't use them interchangeably. Infiltrate to me means water going in through the joints of the pavement. Water going into the soil is infiltration. Exfiltration is easy to remember because exit, right? Exit. I'm exiting water. So I can exfiltrate water in a permeable pavement application by pitching the pavement. Now there's something called C factor, coefficient of runoff. Water on a textured pavement like our Mista or our Blue, which can be installed in permeable applications, has a high C factor like a vegetated slope. So water goes down. But there's some water that's going to pitch off the surface. So I can swale that pavement into an adjacent vegetated filter strip, a biogarden, a bioswale, a weir, or something, and catch that water that might exit off the surface or exfiltrate off the surface. Now, if I've got water entering the system that I can't because my soil's infiltration rate's very low, and I'm going to have water sitting in there for a long period of time because there's some olmitic clays that you can literally build a pond out of. You don't even need a liner, just kind of pat it down and fill it with water and throw some fish in it. You know, I mean, it's that bad. Then I need an exfiltration pipe. So that pipe and its elevation and where it's going to be, you know, that's something that, you know, we have to have a conversation about. I'd like that pipe as high as possible in the horizon so that I can catch that excess water, let it infiltrate into the soil, even though it's slow, let it infiltrate. And then when it starts to back up, and that water is going to be sitting there longer than, you know, 48 hours or 72 hours, then, okay, then let's catch it in a pipe and let's run it off to a dry well or daylighted or whatever so we can get that water out of that system. So water is the lubricant that causes failure. Now, and when you come to showcase this year, we're going to go through this, but that column of clean stone is typically not affected by water. So whether it's underwater or not, its bearing ability really hasn't changed. As long as it's encapsulated, wall on one side, soil on the other, or pavement on the top, soil on the bottom, even if it's full of water, still drive on it.
Yeah. That exfiltration, I hope I said the word right, but that's the only one that kind of scares me. With us being in upstate New York with the freeze thaw, we can have one day where it's 50 degrees. The next day it could be 15 degrees with 8 inches of snow. Freeze and thaw with that water possibly sitting in there, can that cause issues down the road?
No. And it's because of geothermal energy. So if you dig down deep enough, the Earth temperature is about 58 degrees. And it's, you know, it can vary a little bit how deep you are or whatever, but there's kind of a constant core temperature. So when you're using open graded stone in a pavement, like a hybrid installation or a permeable installation, you've opened up that system to geothermal heat. So none of the water in a permeable pavement that might be in the base and in the bedding layer, let's say it gets that high, will freeze because there's air circulating, there's heat circulating, and that water will still flow out even though the surface is frozen rock solid. And you're like, that water has got to be frozen down there. It's not. And we have the data that shows it from University of Guelph, University of New Hampshire, a bunch of studies that have been done. We've done some studies. We have one of the largest permeable pavement applications in North America. It's at our plant in Montreal, Canada. Very similar climate to yours, very similar soils to yours. And we have exfiltration pipes and observation wells and all that technical engineering stuff. And you can literally see the water flowing, even though it's so cold up top. You're thinking, what are we doing outside? You know, and you can still see the water flowing out of that exfiltration pipe. So that's a benefit in a permeable pavement application. And I know you guys sell rock salt, so but, and our products are rock salt resistant. And if you're gonna get snow or ice or whatever, you know, just from the environment, you know, you can rock salt our permeable pavements or our interlocking pavements, which is awesome, but you would need less of it because a permeable pavement with a pronounced joint, open graded stone as a bedding layer and a base is gonna allow that geothermal energy to come up. When it does melt because of the sun or whatever, the water just runs down through the joints and dissipates. So there's a lot of advantages to a permeable pavement in winter climates, and you're starting to see it. That marketplace is growing.
Wow. Yeah. How does like polymeric sand or, you know, an 1/8 inch chip or something, what are you sweeping into those joints? And there's some new products out here that claim that they're a permeable joint compound. Mm-hmm. Which one is better to use? Your basic, maybe Alliance, Gator Sand, G2,
yeah, OSHA compliant. You know,
they also carry an 1/8 inch
set,
chip.
rain safe in 15 minutes. It's a big evolution. I remember as a young man doing patios for people in the Maryland market. And when the job was done, I'd leave them a bucket of concrete sand and say, when the sand migrates out of the joint, sweep some of this in. What a conscientious guy I was.
What a nice guy you were.
Yeah.
Things have changed a lot.
They have changed. I think very similar to our discussion, how we started today, looking at retaining walls and saying there's 3 different bases, looking at the interlocking pavement industry and saying, we can't have blinders on, right? You can use densely graded stone, you can use open graded stone, you can pour concrete and veneer it. We have some great veneer products, Blue 45, the new Pacific product, so let's not, put blinders on. Yeah. I think when it comes to joint fill, we shouldn't have blinders on either. You mentioned Alliance is a great brand, and the G2 product, great product. That's a polymer-based sand, sweep it, wet it, and it hardens. That's a great product, and there's applications where I use it and like it, and I'm very happy with it and recommend it to people. There are water-applied joint compounds where you're wetting and creating a vacuum that's kind of sucking it down into the joint. So there's no compactive effort. There's no vibrating effort on the top of the pavement to consolidate that joint fill. The water kind of creates, like I said, the vacuum that pulls it into the joint, and once it's dry and it's completely off the surface, it hardens and it has a very long life. There's applications where that makes sense to do. I like that sometimes, right? And it takes a lot of water. And if you think you're using enough water, double it, triple it, quadruple it.
It's not enough water. You can keep going.
Yeah, keep going. So there's times when it's applicable, and there's times when just a traditional washed concrete sand, ASTM C33 sand, which is less than 1% passing the 200 sieve, coarse angular particled sand, swept into the joints. Right, same material I'd use in a traditional interlocking pavement as a bedding layer, swept into the joints. Clean the surface off, and then use a joint stabilizing sealer, which is going to, there's some great sealers on the market that will penetrate the concrete, actually chemically bond to the concrete. They're water repellent, they're stain repellent, they're efflorescence repellent. They stabilize the material, and they have, some of them up to a 10+ year life, depending on traffic load.
So it's not a maintenance issue, because that's always a concern.
Yeah, and they're invisible. So in 10 years, you would reapply them, or 8 years, or whatever the number is, 12 years, whatever, and you would have to remember to do it because you wouldn't see that it wore off. There's film-forming sealers that show traffic and wear patterns, so you can see that you've walked over that surface. So you need to re-emulsify them and put a new layer down. I'm not a big fan of those. They don't breathe. They do show wear patterns. You can get efflorescence or some minerals underneath of them, and it gets like a bloom, and then you're like, oh, I got to strip it off, and I got to reapply it. It's just a nice, I like invisible, penetrating, water repellent, stain repellent, efflorescence, and mineral repellent.
Protecting.
Yes, and it stabilizes the joints at the same time. And there's products for permeable application, so you can stabilize the joints of a number 8, number 89, or a number 9 stone, which is awesome. Protect the surface of the units and stabilize the joint material. And in a sand-filled application, again, there's joint stabilizing agents. So, to go into every job and say, this is what we do. No. Yeah. Let's have that conversation. And again, that's the consultative approach that Sensenings has taken is, let me show you the options. Yeah. Let's talk about your job, its proximity to the foundation wall, how much traffic is it going to see, and are you plowing it? Are you snow blowing? Give me some details, and then let's make a good decision for that consumer. It's a driveway. They drive a sports car. Sports cars have soft rubber compound on their tires. Let's use the joint stabilizing sealer. Use traditional washed concrete sand in the joints because it's going to resist those oil stains that might be dripping if you have old cars like I do, and trucks and motorcycles.
All the Jeeps.
Yeah, the Jeeps. Yeah, I got a bunch of Jeeps.
You like your Jeeps, huh?
Yeah, it's a problem. Is my wife going to hear this? I hope not. I got a bunch of them. But those kind of things, rubber compound, drips, and you know what? Let's just use the joint stabilizing sealer, traditional washed concrete sand. It drains better. It's one of the reasons we use that aggregate in the joints and in the bedding layer. Water runs through. Water's a lubricant that causes failure, so we want the water to get through and run out in a traditional application. So let's not have blinders on.
Right.
Polymeric sand, sometimes awesome, perfect. The water applied joint compounds. Now, whether they claim permeability or not, I'm not ready to commit to any of that. I mean, that's their business. I've got to do some more tests, and I got to read. I'm a reader, so I want to read all the lab tests and the university tests before I make a decision. Or joint stabilizing sealer. And you guys, I saw them in your showroom. Maybe you have them. So let's make the best decision for that consumer and go from there.
When it comes to edging, so you got this permeable application, you can't use your standard edging with just spikes because those spikes will just go. You could probably punch those in with your hands, no problem. Push them right in. What do you recommend? Do you recommend doing a poured concrete edging? I know some guys are doing that. Do you recommend a longer spike? What would you say is the best application for edging?
In permeable applications and hybrid applications where you're using open graded stone as a base and your edge straint's always mounted on the base, never on the bedding layers. And there's a couple of edges on the market which are PVCs wrapped in geogrid, and they sit on top of the bedding layer and the pavers lay on top of them. I don't recommend those ever. Part of the reason for the edge restraint is to resist the creep of the pavement. It's a horizontal movement placed on pavement due to pedestrian or vehicular traffic, but also to encapsulate the bedding layer so the bedding layer doesn't squirt out from underneath. So we want to always mount our edge on the base. So if we're using an open graded stone, you're right. Can't use traditional PVC edge restraint with a 8-inch non-galvanized spike. Now, eventually that non-galvanized spike will rust in there and kind of build a little beehive of stone and rust and stay in place, but it will fail before that time period. So in a densely graded stone application, perfect. Open graded stone, that's not going to work. So a couple of options that are on the market. One is hybrid edging from a company called Pave Tool Innovators with a wedged shaped spike. And it's, again, non-galvanized. It will rust into the earth. So the wedge is going to create greater surface area to resist creep, the horizontal movement placed on pavement. So I've done a couple of projects with that material in densely graded stone using the stitching technology where the spikes go in on a 45-degree angle. That's kind of cool. Does it add a lot to the strength? I kind of think so. It makes sense, right? I haven't seen the lab data, but it makes sense, right? On the angle, right? Okay, can't get pushed up during freeze thaw. Okay. The wedge-shaped spike, yeah, absolutely. You have a greater surface area. So that would be one option. Again, you have to buy the edge, you have to buy the spikes, and there's labor associated to driving them in. Okay. The other option, Techo-Bloc has a number of precast curbs, Avignon, Tundra, the Raffinato curb available in 3.5 and 7, real modern, clean look. In a permeable pavement, I like those curbs. And the reason I like those curbs is because they're elevated and they're a part of the erosion and sediment control measures of a permeable pavement, meaning windblown debris and grass and mud and dirt has a less a clear shot to contaminating the joints of my permeable pavement with an elevated curb.
Basically acting as a wall,
That's
not
it.
Allowing debris to collect on that patio or
It's
walkway.
an edging and an edger all in one. So how do I do it? Let's take something clean and modern. Let's take our Raffinato edge, 7-inch, which is a real nice chamfer and comes in real modern colors, gray nickel and beige creams. Really cool. I take it and put it in a bucket of water, right? I put a little mud down, so a Type S mortar mix down on top, just a skim coat, a 1/4 of an inch on top of my 57 stone. And I take that Raffinato curb out of a bucket of water and I set it on that wet mortar bed. So I have mechanical adhesion between the base, the Type S mortar mix, and my unit. And I'm not worried about my unit drying out the mortar because it's wet, right? I've pre-wet it, okay? So now I have some mechanical adhesion. I have that vertical column. Now I come behind that curb with some of that Type S mortar mix, about 3 to 4 inches up, 3 to 4 inches out, and I'll put a steel reinforced trowel edge behind it. Then I'll backfill with my soil and seed and straw or sod or whatever it is. So I have mechanical connection. I have the weight of the unit itself, and I have steel reinforced concrete behind it. That's an edge you can drive over with your Jeep
Yeah, it's not going anywhere.
It's not going anywhere. It's not freeze-thaw susceptible, so you're not worried about frost, and you have an aesthetic, that vertical curb column. You can use cobblestone, so it's a nice option too. That's a rock salt resistant product, natural cobbles. Our products, our dry cast curbings are all rock salt resistant, so in a driveway, you're not worried about them. They're impact resistant, like our Tundra, which is on a 45, and it's got a stone face to it. You wet set it, backfill steel reinforced concrete, open grade stone. Then you screed your bedding layer, lay your units. You'll never be back to fix that.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up the Type S mortar, because we get a lot of questions here at the store about, edging, using just the Type S mortar as an edging, maybe putting fibers in it as you mix it. Mm-hmm. There's a product in the industry right now that is pretty much like, if I would have to say, it's kind of like a Type S mortar, has fibers in it, and they claim it's permeable.
Yeah.
So you're just doing your edging, no more plastic edging. You're troweling that edge. It's permeable. It has fibers in it. It's going to hold. It's going to flex. Mm-hmm. So we're getting a lot of questions on that with the edging, and I agree with you. I kind of like that, the new way of doing things.
Yeah. There's some good PVC edges on the market. Pave Tech makes, was the first one. There's Snap Edge and Gator Edge, and there's a lot of good PVC edges on the market. So I wouldn't count them out.
We sell a lot of Snap Edge here.
Oh, yeah.
We sell a lot of Snap Edge.
There's only a slim pickings of guys that are actually doing the concrete edging.
I would say 95 to 98% is all Snap Edge out of here.
Okay. They're mounting it on the base.
On the base, yep.
8-inch non-galvanized spike every 8 inches, spiked
Basically,
down properly, and with a well-compacted base.
Yes.
Should last for a long time. And I wouldn't count them out, even though I think the product you're mentioning is Perma Edge or something like that. And what I mentioned was using Type S behind precast units. But the concern I have with those, the way I recommended that elevated curb and that product that you mentioned, is the OSHA compliance. Because anytime you're mixing up dry material, even though you're going to wet it, when you dump it out of that bag, it's dry, or out of that bucket, it's dry.
It's dry.
You have airborne respiratory silicates, right? And those silicates have what's called an aerodynamic diameter. So they're buoyant in the air, and you inhale them, and you're only allowed, 80 micrograms in an 8-hour time-weighted 50 micrograms in an 8-hour time-weighted average of respiratory silicates. And you can get that dumping one bag or one bucket of dry material out without an N95 mask on. So
wow.
The last demonstration we had, he didn't have a mask on.
No, he didn't.
I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah, well, I am an OSHA certified competent person.
Yeah.
I teach the OSHA certification class for the MPCA, the Mason Contractors Association. And I should be invited to speak and do it here and give people their certified, or we can bring in an instructor, somebody who's
like that, for sure.
better at speaking than I am. But we have to take it into account. One of the big problems in our industry is that young people see it as hard work and dirty, and I'm not going to get rich doing it. And all that is bull.
Yeah.
I don't agree with that at all. I've become a successful person, and I have a bunch of Jeeps, a couple of motorcycles, a couple of cars,
yeah,
a couple of houses, right? Because I work my butt off, and I like it. And I've worked hard, but I've worked smart too. So if there's vacuum equipment to pick something up, I want it. If there's mechanical equipment to pick something up, I want it. And if there's a safety equipment out there that my team should have, like a hard hat with built-in attenuators and blowing clean air across your face, so you're not getting. If that piece of respiratory equipment is $1,000, I want it. Because I want young people to get in there and grab that. IQ saw. You guys carry IQ saws.
We
awesome.
feel the same way. We sell them.
Yeah.
We have to.
Yeah.
We have to, and we want to.
Stop saying sell. Help people buy them.
Right.
Because otherwise they're I've got friends. I've been around, this is like my second week in the industry. It's a long time. And there's guys out there that get pneumonia and get bronchitis and get all these diseases regularly, because their lungs are so full of that silicate, they can't fight it off. So they get sick more, and you can see it in their skin. Their skin isn't, red and rosy. It's kind of white, and that's because their body isn't absorbing oxygen at the same rate anymore. We have to change the contracting community. You guys having, N95 masks on the counter, having safety glasses, having alcohol wipes, having great quality attenuators and hard hats. All that stuff needs to be front and center. And we got to encourage them, even at a low margin. Like, listen, you just got to have them. Don't buy safety glasses by the pair, buy them by the gross, 144 pairs at a time. Buy the wipes that keep them from fogging up. Buy the IQ saws, right? Get used to using them. Otherwise, we're never going to recruit the young people into our business, right? And everybody, not just young people, right? There's minorities that aren't as active in the hardscaping and landscaping industry that should be. Women aren't as active in our industry as they should be. And we want to get them because it's fun and we're outside.
It is.
And it's great. And the camaraderie is great. But they don't want to do it if they're going to go home covered in silicates, breathing it the whole way home. You got to give them a uniform they can change out of. You got to give them the right safety equipment and bring someone in to train them on how to use them. And when you cut your hand, we have a safety kit and we open it up and we bandage you up. Just rub some dirt in it. No, that's crap. No.
I think the more Techo does their showcases and provides, you guys have a lot of tools at your showcases. Mm-hmm. And I think our tool department at both locations has grown over the last 5 years. And we provide tools for all our contractors, and they call us. If we don't carry it, we want to get it for them.
Yeah. Some people would call that upselling or cross-selling. I call it loving your customer. And love is living our values every day. And our values is we care about you. We want you to succeed. We want you to be profitable, right? And the way to do that is with equipment, with tools, with techniques, systems, and processes that can make you better. So let's take a second. Yes, you're here to buy, Villaggio walkway from Techo-Bloc. I hope so. Yeah. And you're here, and that's great. But let me talk to you about this way of scribing in the edge. Let me show you this tool for mechanically laying, this heavier, large-scale Roca steps that might be at the end of that walkway. We're going to just tie a toe strap around it.
No.
Is it 1980? What? You're going to tie a toe?
We could buy 2 step clamps, what are $600 a piece? And we sell a lot of step clamps. You know how heavy everything is now.
Yeah,
they work great.
Back.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Well worth it.
Absolutely. And it's a marketing tool. It's a recruiting tool. You want to show your customers that this is an automated system, that it's going to get done. It's going to get done right. It's going to get done safely on your property. And then when we're recruiting, let's say you're at your local church and you have an opportunity to speak and say, I own a landscape company and I'm looking for good people to work, not necessarily young, not necessarily old, not necessarily male or female or whatever. I'm just looking for good people to work. Let me show you a little video of how we do things. How our trailer is set up. Let me show you these clamps that we use. These things are 700 pounds. We're not picking them up with a toe strap. This is how we do it. And everybody's like, wow, that's really cool. Yeah, it's cool. And we're outside and there's great camaraderie and we have a lot of fun. Well, let's take advantage of this, opportunity to show off for our business.
I had a project manager came in, bought a ton of tools. You could tell that he truly cared for his employees. Mm-hmm. I had one of the foremen from that company call me and thank me. He said, I look forward to going to work now. My back was aching. Now it was a vacuum suck, just a paver lifter. They were doing a driveway. He didn't have to be on his knees all day. And it was just nice to see that he actually called and thanked us for providing them with the proper tools to get him through the day.
They make just amazing tools nowadays. I mean, I grew up doing this industry. I was doing pavers when I was 17 years old. The stuff they have now makes your job way easier. Work smarter, not harder. I mean, the tools, you got this skid steers, minis, just the different paving tools through Pave Tool. Mm-hmm. Definitely check it out because there's a lot out there that can make your job a lot easier.
Yeah, and Pave Tech. And work hard and smart. Because what we do, I mean, it's hard. I mean, concrete's heavy and stone is heavy and there's work to be done. And I like that part of it. I like, the physical aspect of what we do. I don't get to build many jobs anymore, except when the cameras are running. And then I get to be the guy that gets all the credit, on the videos and that kind of stuff on our YouTube channel. You can see me.
We watch a lot of those. Just a question, though. How many takes does it take to do one of those?
Do
you do a lot or
I'm
no?
one take.
Really? Get out of here.
Yeah.
That's pretty amazing.
Yeah. It doesn't hurt that I write it and then I do it
and rehearse it.
It's what I do. And like you guys, I have a lot of empathy for our community. Not sympathy, empathy. I have been in your shoes. I have carried, 110-pound retaining wall block in my hips, walking around like a penguin to get it to the wall face to set it up on that wall. And I realize that that's happening even today, and that's ridiculous. That we need to automate, we need to be better. And when you have that kind of empathy, when the camera's on or not on, I'm on. I want to help them win. Like I get those kind of calls, and I get those kind of Facebook messages. You changed our business, or Techo-Bloc has by bringing this out and educating us this way has done this for us. That keeps us going.
I love your videos because we see the retail end of it here. All they care is about the finished product. I mean, to be honest with you, they're paying a big chunk of change to look beautiful. They could care less about what goes into it. And you guys provide us with those videos of what it takes and how to do it right. So I want to thank you for putting out those videos. It's really helped us.
The family at Techo-Bloc investing over the last 15 years in creating the videos, and they're expensive. There's no way around it. The value's awesome, but they're expensive. And consistently and persistently saying, we're going to do it again. We're going to do it again. And, over the years, my wife has said, this showcase thing going to continue? I'm like, I don't know. It's pretty expensive. And then I look at the family at Techo-Bloc, and they go, yep, this is what we're doing this year. Let's have all these ideas, throw them on the table, and how can we help people be more effective and build better jobs and make more money and the consumers be that much happier. It really is driving, I think, the industry. I think you've seen other manufacturers try to follow suit, which is awesome. Because competition's good for business. And they're doing more to educate the contracting community and bring new products to light. And I think that's awesome. I like to be pushed. I like to say, well, Paver Pete did a good job. We're going to do it better. Good, man. Let's have at it. Let's keep making it better. And I think the family of Techo-Bloc has really driven that in North America. And I think, I travel to Europe once in a while. I'm Greek, so I get an opportunity to travel over there. And I hear people in this industry say the name Techo-Bloc makes me smile.
Yeah. Keeps you on your toes, too. We have the same thing here. We have a lot of competition in the distribution side of things. So we're doing these podcasts. We're marketing a lot. And to be honest with you, I think we took a lot from Techo-Bloc or, some of the manufacturers, but I think you guys being the industry leaders and how we can market as a distributor and almost look like a manufacturer. You know what I mean? So we took that idea and said, hey, we're going to be the first distributor to really start marketing. And there's a cost to it, but we need all this footage. And not just for the retail end, but we need it for the contractors. And they can sit here and listen to this and listen to the podcast and watch all our videos, and we can educate them. And, and that's what we bring to the table as a distributor.
Definitely. I definitely appreciate you stopping in today. You gave us a lot of insight. We obviously had a lot of questions in regards to this, so definitely we appreciate you coming and sitting down with us, making the drive through the winter storm, and thanks a lot, man.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
We appreciate it, Pete.
Thank you.
We'll see you soon.